Hey folks, just a reminder that Off the Record is available not just here on Spotify, but wherever you get your podcasts. That's Apple, Google, Amazon, and your favorite podcasts app. Hello, Delaware County. It's Independence Week, and this is your weekly news bulletin from The Reporter, Delaware County, New York's leading news source. I'm Andrew Cantor with some of the top stories you'll find in print and online. This episode is sponsored by Decker Advertising, your one-stop shop for all your business and promotional needs, from logo design and custom clothing to screen printing, lawn signs, banners, decals, car wraps, and much more. Call today for your free estimate. See how Decker Advertising can help you. Their number, 607-746-2178, or you can visit dckr.com. And now the news. 5 people were killed when their small plane broke up in mid-air around 2 p.m. June 30th, crashing into a wooded area in Sidney Center near Lake Cecil Road. The plane's wreckage was located by emergency services crews around 8:30 p.m. The plane, a Piper PA-46 registered in Atlanta, took off from Oneonta Municipal Airport and was en route to West Virginia. The names of the people on board haven't been released. The cause of the breakup isn't yet known. The FAA and NTSB are investigating. Here's a more uplifting aircraft story. If you ever find yourself missing a small herd of cows, Downsville pilot Gary Clint is the guy you want to call. When 8 cows belonging to James and Jamie Backus of Trout Creek escaped their farm on June 26th, they posted to social media asking if anyone had seen 18,000 pounds of wandering bovine. Gary Clint saw that post. Not only is he the former airport manager for Sidney Municipal Airport, he happens to be a private pilot with his own Cessna 172. He took to the skies and began searching for the cows from 3,700 feet in the air. "I wasn't going to quit until I found them," he said, and find them he did, just about 2 hours later. The cool weather that morning had the cows moving to an open field for warmth, and Clint spotted them, radioing their location to cow wranglers on the ground who brought the escapees back home. Read the details of the story and see photos of Gary Clint and the escapee cows in this week's Reporter. Oh, and an earlier version of this story mistakenly reported that the cows escaped by tunneling under the fence using sharpened spoons stolen from the kitchen. In fact, they simply broke through. This next story is rated PG-13, so you might want to cover your children's ears. Former Delaware County Sheriff's Deputy Tyler McAteer pleaded not guilty to 1 count of official misconduct in Franklin Town Court on June 27th. He was charged with official misconduct, accused of viewing porn on his department-issued phone. Not just porn, but porn of underage individuals, 2 teens engaged in sexual intercourse. And not just any video. It was a video given to McAteer by one of those teens as part of an investigation into the distribution of that video. If you're wondering if you heard that correctly, you did. McAteer was arrested by Sidney State Police on March 6th and charged with unlawfully viewing the photographs and video on the county-issued cell phone, quote, with the intent to obtain the benefit of sexual gratification while in an off-duty capacity, unquote. Weeks after being placed on paid leave, Delaware County Sheriff Craig Dumont announced McAteer was no longer an employee of the department. If convicted of the misdemeanor, that's correct, misdemeanor, McAteer faces up to a year in jail. It's unclear whether he'll face other charges relating to the case. Everyone stay calm. We're going to talk about taxes. Specifically, Delaware County sales taxes, which the Delaware County Finance Committee discussed at their June 26th meeting. In a nutshell, the county has had several good years of record-setting sales tax revenue, and it expected that to continue, so the 2024 budget counted on about 2.3% more in sales tax revenue, which seemed reasonable. The problem is that so far, this year's sales tax revenue is more than 5% behind last year's. That's not necessarily a huge deal, though. The fiscal year doesn't end until December, so there are still 6 months left to make up the shortfall. And last year's revenues were well over budget, so it's not as if the cupboards are bare. Just in case, though, you might want to go out and, buy stuff. In legal news, public defender Joseph Ermetti argued for, and effectively got, a mistrial in a rape case in Delaware County Court. Why? Last year, the district attorney's office was ordered to give Ermetti the alleged victim's medical records. But for reasons, it delivered them the day the trial was set to begin, a year and 3 months later. The DA also added last-minute witnesses without informing the defense. Between those two missteps, Ermetti argued that he couldn't mount a proper defense, and Judge Gary Rosa agreed, dismissing the jury and effectively declaring a mistrial. Ermetti will now submit a written request for action, for example, dismiss the case, and the DA's office will respond before Rosa provides a ruling. The folks at the U.S. Department of Labor have proposed new standards for fire brigades, and Delaware County supervisors pass a resolution opposing them. Those changes require a lot more administrative work and have stricter new safety and equipment requirements. They might not be a problem for paid fire departments and those with big budgets, but for rural volunteer brigades, they can be crushing. As Delaware County Emergency Services Director Steve Hood put it, the administrative costs alone will be financially crippling. And with many volunteer fire departments already understaffed, new stricter medical and fitness standards may disqualify current volunteers and deter new recruits. As Delhi Fire Chief Bill Cairns said, there are probably people in the fire service right now who would not be able to continue under these requirements. Local firefighters don't think all the proposed changes are bad. In fact, new safety protocols are welcomed. The problem, they say, is making them mandatory without having conversations with the boots on the ground. Keep in mind that these new standards are still only proposed, so there is time for local organizations to push back. And now we turn to Looking Back. News from the Reporter 100 years ago this week. Nearly made into mincemeat. Young man falls down chute close to revolving knives. Harold, son of Mr. and Mrs. S.E. Foote of Gregorytown, while working at the Binghamton Brickworks one day last week, met with an accident that nearly cost him his life. He fell into a chute that led to a machine in which were rapidly revolving knives, stopping within 2 feet of those knives. His cries for help were heard by other workmen who shut off the motor, thus stopping the machine. It took the combined efforts of 8 men to extricate Mr. Foote from his perilous position. 2 doctors were called, who found that, aside from a few bruises, he was none the worse for his accident. In other news, Calvin, the youngest son of Mr. and Mrs. George Davidson of Mundale, fell while playing Saturday evening and broke his collarbone. Dr. E. Ray Gladstone reduced the fracture. Returning to 2024, there's plenty more to read in this week's issue of The Reporter, including our continuing celebration of the class of 2024. That's graduation coverage in Walton, the Delaware Academy in Delhi, Franklin, Margaretville, and Sidney, in addition to last week's Delaware County Schools graduation coverage. And there's plenty more. To get all the news that matters to you and your Delaware County community, subscribe to The Reporter at the-reporter.net or call 607-464-4009. We'll see you next week.